warm welcome back to our participatory health and healing program, and we are embarking now on level 2, which, as you know, will incorporate module 4, 5 and 6. And today I warmly welcome you to this module, which is going to build on the foundations that you've experienced in module 1, 2 and 3. And it's all about now diving into the doorways into understanding participatory health and healing in a much deeper way. So tighten your belts and get ready for this journey, because it's going to really take you into new territory, into what I think is a revolutionary approach to health and healing. The doorways. I want you to be conscious of the doorways that have brought you into your own life. Right from the beginning, you were conceived. You came through a certain gateway into the physical world. And after so many months, you emerged in your body in a free space through the doorway of your mother's birthing process, and then you arrived in this world. Think of that. Think of how you then developed through the early stages, all the different milestones, into your pre-learning, preschool learning, and then into your beginning formal learning, each of which was a doorway into a new awareness. And then you went in search of learning in all kinds of different ways. And I want to welcome that process, because that's where you are right now. The culmination of many learning pathways, many teachers, many books and study and life learning. And I want to really honor all of that in where you are, because we are continuing that process in our search for a deeper understanding of self and the world. And our focus today is going to be on self, for as you know, we work on the 3 dimensions of being: the I, the you, and the we. And module 4 is about the doorways into the I. Level 1 prepared us for an understanding of ourselves as a body, as a soul, and as a spirit. And we learned about the awareness pathways on the one hand and the participatory pathways on the other. And this prepares us for the work that we will be doing today, where we will be introducing 2 specific, very vital and very powerful approaches to health and healing. We call them the threefold law, or the threefold principle, and the fourfold principle. And in the video recording here, we will be dividing our learning into these 2 main chapters. They are vital elements for both our personal and professional understanding of health and healing. I want to start by connecting our awareness with our self by dropping in and maybe closing your eyes if you feel comfortable, and being conscious firstly of your body. And I want to ask you to focus your attention to the head part of your body, and just scanning it and being aware of the form and functionality of your head, and then letting that awareness drop down into the chest region, just noticing the experience of your body in that area, and then dropping down further into your abdomen, into your belly region, and then into your limbs, becoming conscious of your body. And next, become conscious of awareness itself, conscious of your thinking, conscious of your feeling, what's going through your body sensations, and what your impulses are in your will expression. And then becoming aware of some part of yourself that is giving direction through your attention seeking, through your locating these different parts of yourself. Something that guides the process. And that part we want to honor as a higher part of self, a part that can give meaning to life, that can make a wish. And I ask you now to make a wish about what you would wish to attain through this Module 4, through this deep learning process. Thank you. I want to then go on to an experience that we've had in level 1, where we called it the universal law of contraction and expansion. You will remember our movement of contraction and expansion. And I want you to follow my movements. So find a free space where you can actually move into this movement of contraction and expansion. And as you do this, I want you to be aware how you move into yourself in this contracted way, and then let go and expand and move out into the world. So do that a few times, contracting within, and notice there's a pause before you expand out. And then there's a pause before you contract in. You will notice here a particular rhythm. Expanding, pause, contracting, pause. Expanding, pause, that connects you with contracting, pause, that allows you to connect with expansion. And that's the rhythm that we're going to speak about in the threefold principle of life. You will have experienced from that movement that contraction draws the forces inward, from outside inward. And expansion is the very opposite, where the awareness and the action is going from the inside outward. Whereas the one is a receiving motion, the other one is a giving motion. And this is very much an archetypal process between all interactions in life. I would like now to focus our attention on several processes that we have already experienced, and that will be very important in our ability to understand the deeper immersion that we are planning to embark upon. Firstly, there's what I called the preparation process. What this involves, as you may remember, is finding curiosity and interest for whatever you're going to learn. In other words, the will to know. And then we open ourselves. It's almost like we physically open ourselves in our mind, our heart, and in our body to whatever we wish to learn. We enable a certain wonder to be present, and reverence. And then we make sure that we're present. We're present somewhere in ourself. We're not out there, we're here, about to receive some information, some knowing. And we then are in partnership with the world. So it's these several processes that I'd like you to remember and try and practice. The second process is about attention, being able to direct your attention wherever you choose. Not that your attention is pulled away wherever it wants, but that you are the guide and the focus of your attention. So, for example, I can focus my attention on a place between my two eyes, or my third eye, let's say. Or I can notice my voice and the space where it's emitting. Or I can put my attention right down in my belly. Learning to move your attention is very important in being able to experience ourselves in this heightened way. That is the attention process that I'd like you to understand and to practice. The third process is what we call the awareness process. Awareness is taking a thought, giving it a picture. Let's say, I wish this module to be the most exciting and empowering experience of your life. And that's an idea, a thought. And I can now picture that. I can imagine that thought actually happening in real life. And now I take that picture and I bring it down into my system somewhere, into my feelings. I create a feeling around that picture. And then I bring it further down into my body, into a awareness somewhere the body picks up that feeling. We call it a sensation. And then I drop it down into my whole body and I embody that. So I bring it right down into physical matter. This is the awareness process. These three processes are fundamental for a deep immersion into an understanding of the threefold and the fourfold principles in the body and in the world. So take a moment just to reflect on the value and the practice of these three processes. What I mean by deep learning is the move towards an experience of a subject matter that goes beyond the intellectual, the gaining of information and facts, but rather comes out of an original experience of yourself. And this requires a certain position of our awareness. And so we want to prepare our body, our minds, our spirit to engage with that subject matter in a much more personal manner, in a much more body-orientated manner, in a way where our awareness is far more focused on a whole person, not on just a mind that is looking at an intellectual composition of facts and figures and so on. So let me give you an example of what I mean by deep learning. Take the subject, deep learning itself. Now I can go and research that on Google and find out many hundreds of papers about deep learning, and that is just information and facts. But when I ask myself to actually experience deep learning in the way that I'm describing, I'm going to actually drop into preparation. That is part of the deep learning. I'm going to prepare myself in the way that we've described to be open and ready to receive this information. I'm going to focus my attention on this subject matter in a very specific way. How? By, for example, dropping my awareness from thinking about it to picturing it, to feeling it, to sensing it, and to embodying it. And that is the difference between just going onto a computer and picking out all the information, thousands and thousands of words, compared to the experience of actually preparing oneself to learn more. We want to now focus our attention on the threefold universal principle. It is a principle of life that stands behind the sense-perceptible phenomena as a, you can say, guiding force field that can be discovered in many different realms of existence. In level 1, we have already experienced ourself in a threefold way. I refer to the human whole person constitution as a body, that which gives us structure and form, as a soul or psyche, which is the awareness that we have that enables us to have consciousness on different levels, and then a third element, the spirit, a part of ourself that belongs to a higher reality we may call spirit, the divine, but that connects us with a transpersonal realm of being. And then we also experienced and have worked with the three dimensions, the I, the you, and the we. These are fundamental threefold dimensions which have everything to do with our participation with ourself, with others, with the world, and with the higher realms. We want to now focus our attention on the threefoldness in the bodily sphere. Level 2 is going to be very focused on the body. Level 3 will be more focused on the psyche or the soul, and level 4 on the spirit. There is immense value in looking at health, ill health and healing from the perspective of this threefold principle. And as practitioners, therapists, we will completely revolutionize our theory and practice by taking this understanding into our work. We may see the threefold principle in many different historical contexts. In Greek mythology, for example, we see the three fates. In fairy tales, we have the three brothers, the three sisters, Cinderella and the two step-sisters. In folklore, a number of many different stories, the three pigs, the three bears, and so on. In religions, of course, we have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In the Indian religion, Brahma, Krishna, and Shiva. And even in our relatively modern history, we have those three principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity that came out of the French Revolution. Let us look at the way this threefold law manifests itself in the body, in the human body. Looking at the human form, we can see there's a head region where the face faces forward, the back of the head faces back. There's a chest area to which the upper limbs are attached, and there's a trunk area to which the lower limbs are attached. When we look at the parts of the human body, we will find this threefold principle. We see the skin having three particular divisions: a epidermis, which is the top layer, a dermis, which is the middle layer, and a hypodermis, which is the lower layer. Look at the limbs. There you see an arm with an upper portion, a middle portion, and a lower portion. The upper part is round. It has a very spherical joint that connects with the shoulder girdle, compared to the hands, which is radial, and the middle part, which is one bone in the upper, two bones in the lower arm, and then 5 bones into the hand, which expresses this tendency to radial towards the extremity. The head, where you can see there is a more rounded upper portion comprising the forehead. We have the middle portion, which is more the face, which is where the real facial expressions are, and the sense organs of the eyes and the ears and the nose and so on. And then a mobile lower part, the jaw, which is there to move, and it's like a limb. Compared to the trunk region, which together with the limbs has a much more radial, linear form and is built for movement. The metabolic organs contained within the trunk are very actively engaged in all kinds of metabolic activities. And in between, you have this chest region, which is a combination of form, like the head, a barrel-shaped chest, which is not quite circular, and ribs, which are very linear and radial, and they contain the organs of the heart and the lungs, which are both mobile and resting. And so you see a kind of intermediate region here between a round and immobile head region and a linear and very mobile trunk limb region. It would be well worth your while to look at the human morphology from this perspective and see for yourself how the different parts, the different organs, carry this threefold nature. In essence, what we can say is that there are 3 functional systems. We may call them the neurosensory system, the rhythmic system, and the metabolic limb system. The neurosensory system is that system that is mainly focused in the head region and consists of the brain, the nervous system, and the sensory organs. We shall see that this is a system that is geared towards receiving information from the outside towards the inside. And if we compare this with the exact polarity of the metabolism and limb system, as we call it, we shall see that this is a system that houses the metabolic organs and the whole motor system, all geared towards action and executing of function. In other words, movement from inside outwards. And then we have the middle system, the rhythmic system, that mediates between the information coming in and the information going out. In other words, the activities of respiration, where there's inspiration and expiration, a drawing in and a drawing out. And the heart likewise contracts and expands in systole and diastole, illustrating the essence of the rhythmic system, which has everything to do with rhythm, balance, mediation, and connecting the two polarities of contraction and expansion. Let me try and explain how we experience this threefold law in our everyday life. For example, I'm looking at this pen and I am observing it and experiencing it with my sensory awareness, and I'm taking this information into my brain. I'm receiving the information through my neurosensory apparatus, and I'm thinking about it. And I need my brain to function in order that I can think about it. And now I say to myself, so what am I going to do with this pen? In other words, I am now starting to discern, starting to ask questions, starting to decide what to do with this information. And now I say, right, I'm going to use this pen to write something on a piece of paper. In other words, I've used my motor, metabolism, and limb system to execute an action. So there we have the three systems, always in everything we're doing, receiving information from the outer world, deciding how I relate to it, what I should do with that information, the rhythmic system, and then executing it through my metabolism and my limb system. You will see from the various pictures presented the organs that are involved in the neurosensory system. There's the brain, there's the pathway of nerves. Note especially how symmetrical the nervous system is. The brain is relatively symmetrical as well. And then the variety of sense organs at the end of this neural pathway, which are there to collect the information through the sensory awareness. The eyes, the ears, the touch sensation, the taste, the smell. And when you look at the sense organs, note that many of them have elements of the threefoldness built into them. I'd encourage you to look at anatomy books and to see for yourself if you can discover this threefold principle. When we now look at the pictures of the metabolic limb system, you see a very different story. You have the metabolic organs like the liver, like the thyroid. Well, the liver is a highly asymmetrical organ. And what it does is thousands of different metabolic processes that it executes. And it constantly is moving substance in and out in an activity that is very different to the neurosensory system. And there we see also pictures of the skeleton and its appendages, the joints, and the tendons and the ligaments, and of course the organs that execute the action, like the hands and the toes. So you'll get a completely different experience if you are able to even use your own action now to notice how quiet the head is and how actually mobile the limbs are. And this is what's going on in the metabolism all the time. Then we come to looking at the organs of the rhythmic system, and we see paramountly it's the heart and the lungs, and these are built for mediation between contraction and expansion. And this is you can say, the essence of the rhythmic system, which is not only found in these two organs, by no means, it's found in every organ. Wherever there is rhythm, such as the digestive system with its peristalsis, contraction and expansion, or the kidneys, excreting and secreting inward. So take a moment and just reflect on these three systems, whereby we are no longer looking at just organs which have no connection to one another, but we are starting to, in a very logical way and in a very lawful way, bringing certain organ systems into a certain kind of functional system. And this is something that we can experience through our own functionality, through our thinking and sensing, where we draw in to our head, to our senses, to our neurosensory system. Just be aware of that flow of information, of impressions that are coming in. What do you do with it? You think about it. And then notice what happens somewhere in the chest region where we get a feeling. Balance is all about feeling. Breathing is about balancing. And the feelings are very connected with the breathing. And then drop down into your metabolic limb system, which is all about expression, the will, the activity of doing. And so you will get a direct experience of the threefold human systems. This is what I call deep learning. Let me describe then how the threefold system can be an invaluable tool for a health practitioner. We may see, for example, a young child coming to the office with a very large head, and he places himself in a chair and he doesn't move himself at all during this time. And this is a child whose nervous system is very pronounced and he is immobile. Compared to, let's say, an adult that comes in who is immediately very active in his nerves and his senses. You can see how he's thinking and he's darting around all over the place. And he is a very lean and thin individual. And then there's the opposite of that, where you see a patient who has, let's say, overweight, very red face, is clearly very powerful metabolic organ in its nature. And immediately you are able to differentiate between these different types diagnostically and know that there are going to be certain illnesses that are predisposed. And of course, we have certain therapies that can deal with that and balance out these one-sided features. I would like now to introduce to you a second universal system based on the fourfold universal principle. And before we dive into this new insight, deep learning process, I'd like you to once again prepare yourselves in the way that we described earlier on by creating curiosity and interest, opening up a space in the mind, the heart, and the body, feeling the wonder and the reverence for new experiences, finding your I presence and your readiness to partner with this system. And I'd like you now to create a thought about what you wish you can do, what you wish to attain through this. Bring this thought into a picture, drop it down into your body, into the feeling realm, which we have identified somewhere here in the chest region. Drop further down into the belly. This is an area that we experience things more in a bodily aware manner, and then bring the whole experience down into the body, right down into the metabolic and limb region. So we use this fourfold dropping of thinking, sensing, feeling, and willing into the threefold components, the systems that we've already experienced. Level 1 has already introduced us to this fourfold system. You will recall the 4 states of awareness. We have the sleeping state, the dreaming state, the waking state, and the superconscious state. Recall that and just remember what it's like to be in the sleeping mode, the dreaming mode, the wakefulness mode, and the super conscious mode. Remember times when you were in this, and there you are experiencing one level of fourfold awareness. A second was the gateway awarenesses. We use this all the time. Be conscious that this is a fourfold process of thinking, sensing, feeling, and willing. We've experienced that. Be conscious of it. The more you practice this, the more you will be able to enhance and deepen these 4 gateway awarenesses. And now we want to focus on the fourfold bodily systems. Once again, focus your attention on your body, and you will notice that we have a solid component. We have solid structures such as the bones. The teeth are very, very hard and solid tissue. We have the hair. We have semi-solid organs like the skin. Just be conscious of them. Just notice them as you're sitting, that you need this solid structure, solid system, solid organs to withstand the pressures of a solid earth around you. If you didn't have bones, you would be melting into your chair. You would be dissolving or just dropping formlessly into your chair. The solid that you're experiencing gives you your structure and your form. The solid system carries other tissues, other organs. We know, for example, that we have a fluid system. We have the fluids flowing throughout the tissues, either in canals and tubes, the blood circulation, or other compartments, or just connective fluid that flows between all the cells. Just notice right now your saliva, the fluid in your mouth that's constantly being swallowed and produced again and again. And we can experience other elements of the fluid system. This is a very distinct system that exists within the body. And then we have the airy system that we're aware of in the very moment we, turn our attention to our breathing. The air is present throughout the body. We think it's only in the lungs. It's not true. It's actually present in every cell. There's gas exchange in every cell. The millions or billions of blood cells each contain a little drop of air, because the air that we take in through our lungs is transported through the blood into the red blood cells and carried thereby to all the tissues of the body. Can you imagine, just picture for a moment, a little drop of air in every blood cell, every red blood cell, and try and think away or picture away everything else in the system so that you can just see the sparkling air, light carrying drops of air coursing through the body. The air is present in all hollow organs as well. And then we have a fourth system, which may not be substantial in its nature, but is very present, and that is the warmth. The system has a very specific variant of warmth, so that the hands, you might feel, are cool at the moment, but when you put your hand on your head, for example, it may be hot, or between your thighs, or different organs we know have a completely different temperature. The liver, for example, is 40 degrees Celsius compared to the blood, which is 37, compared to the lungs, which is 35, and so on. And this warmth is essential to the healthy functioning of the body. We thus can clearly differentiate four body systems: a solid system, a fluid system, an airy system, and a warmth system. Each of these four bodily systems are highly complex and organized in a completely different way, because they are four distinct states of matter. These are the same laws that we find in the outer world. Each state of matter has its own specific characteristics. The same laws that are active in the four bodily systems are, of course, also active in the substances of nature. So here we see a crystal. It is solid and compact with a very specific form. It is pretty lifeless, and we can say this belongs to the mineral kingdom. When we compare the fluid, the water in this glass, to the stone, it's a very different substance. It is flowing and streaming, obviously, depending on what we do with it. It holds itself in the contours of whatever it's contained. It is adaptable and connecting. The fluids in the body likewise connect to organ systems. It's that which lives in the plant kingdom. Without fluid, without water, there's no life. And now we compare it to the air that is contained in this object. Air is something that is very compressible. I can compress the air to a certain degree, and then it will expand again, unlike water or solid. So it has a very mobile existence. And air is something that is present in the animal kingdom. The animal kingdom, unlike the plant, has a mobile air system. Finally, the flame, the fire. That's of a very different nature altogether. It is able to penetrate all the matters. It's penetrable, and it also activates and fires up things. We see that these four systems have very specific characteristics. As different as the mineral kingdom is from the plant kingdom, and the plant kingdom from the animals, so the forces are working in these substances have their specific characteristics. And we can ask, what is it that makes the ice so different from the water, which is so different from the steam? And yet they're all composed of hydrogen and oxygen in a particular combination. There has to be some force, some kind of governing principle that determines the nature of each of these substances. And now the Greek philosophers and medical people like Aristotle and Hippocrates, they knew about this hidden invisible law, and they called it by the name of the four elements. The four elements of earth, water, air, and fire were fundamental principles for the forefathers of our Western biomedicine. And they worked with these principles both in their diagnosis and their therapy. And we can take up these elements again, which will give us deep insight into the nature of the human body and beyond. You will see some pictures of these elements presented in the slides, and these, of course, are just external pictures that will have nothing to do with your own experience other than thinking and seeing them. However, you can actually drop into the experience of these four elements in a way that we have experienced before and that we can present again now. The four elements have an obvious connection to the four kingdoms. I say four kingdoms because I'm including the human kingdom. The solid is clearly connected to the mineral kingdom. The fluid is that element which makes a difference between the mineral and the plant kingdom. Very central, very vital part of the plant is the fluids, which make up something like 80 to 90% of the plant nature. And then we have the airy substances, which, as we said, is quite typical of the animal kingdom. Once the air becomes organized in the system, it is no longer a plant, it is more an animal, which has mobility, which has sensitivity, which has a breathing system, which even has a feeling component to it. And finally, we have the fire substance. And this is something that you can say is very typical of the human kingdom. Of course, the human kingdom has all the others. It has the solid mineral, it has the fluid plant, it has the airy animal, but it has this fire principle which enables it to penetrate all existence, enables it to have deep feelings of empathy and compassion. The warmth is what differentiates us from the animal kingdom in certain ways, both physical and spiritual. Right. Everyone, I would love you to create a bit of space around you so that we can actually go into some kind of experience where we want to try and relate these four bodily systems with four states of matter, with four awarenesses, and with four elements. And we want to show you how this can be very practical and very applicable to your medical therapeutic work. So let's first experience what the solid is like. The solid as a mineral. If you were to imagine yourself as a mineral, which is what you have in your body because of its chemical and physical properties, drop down into your body, embody yourself as a mineral. Clearly, it's motionless, it's lifeless, it's without any kind of awareness other than a kind of deep sleeping awareness, if anything. Feel that. And now let's step away from that and look at the picture. And there you get a picture of someone rock solid. Well, have you ever seen this coming into your room? Someone who is very sturdy and solid like a rock, but is so immobile that they can't move themselves very much. Think about all the degenerative illnesses. A person can hardly move when his spine is fused, for example. That's where the mineralization becomes too powerful. The element of solidity is too strong. You get it? Okay. And now let's experience the fluid. Picture the fluid in your body. Picture its flowing, streaming nature throughout the body. 70% of your body contains water. So let that flow now and show me what that feels like. And so you move into the water, the watery element, which is what your bodily nature is, which is what, feeling life is a bit like that. Sensory life has its connection to the fluid as well. And it's a never-ending dynamic movement and flowing. Okay. And I want you to step away from that, shake it off, and observe yourself in that flowing motion. All motion. Connecting, flowing backwards and forwards. Look at that. When that becomes too powerful, imagine seeing someone whose forces of the water are just too powerful, too strong. What about people who retain a lot of water, who are swollen, where the water element becomes too strong? There you get a picture of all kinds of pathologies and all kinds of constitutions. And now we go to the third element, the airy. That airy quality is very buoyant. It's very expansive, but it can also contract. It's expansive like your expiration. It's contracting like your inspiration. And we are continuously in and out of movement, mobile and active. And this can manifest itself in all kinds of ways. Like an animal is very reactive to all kinds of things, which can lead to destructive, constructive, can cause a whole range of feelings and actions that belong to the animal kingdom. We have this in our soul life, a very powerful energy of the air that is constantly in action and motion. Take a look at that. Step away and see air that is too powerful and what that would do in a system that is overburdened with air. For example, an asthmatic, where the air is compressed in a tight space, or a chronic obstructive airways disease where there's just too much air in the lungs. And so we start to recognize these different elements in the patients that come to see us. And finally, the warmth. Well, picture that. Imagine you are now just warmth. Hard to imagine. But maybe you can notice certain areas in the body that are cooler than others, warmer. But also you can start to feel what is a warm person like, what is a cold person like. What does warmth do? It radiates out and warms the world. If I become like that, then I become like an oven, a warmth being. But I can also contract into my coldness and I can become completely isolated. Okay, these are different parts of the human being. Take a look at that. Warm, cold, different differentiated degrees of warmth. And of course, this is what we see in our practice. Patients who are cut off, cold, others who are very warm, but the body in fever, the body in ice, cold, chill, and so on. So there are countless varieties of manifestations of the elements if one starts to look at it from that point of view. And why is this so important? Because it's a diagnostic tool that allows us to experience exactly what's going on, not according to a textbook which says this or the other, pneumonia, fever, flu. It's about reality, about experiencing it, because you can experience the four elements yourself. And once you can diagnose on that level, well, you can institute a treatment that is directly applicable to the one-sided nature of these elements. This fourfold bodily system is imbued with life. It is not a lifeless organism, but a life-filled organism. And we can feel the difference between that part of ourselves that is physical, mineral, and that part of ourselves that is filled with this other component which we may call life. And when we consider a lifeless corpse, for example, and a living body, we can sense the difference, because a lifeless corpse will disintegrate the moment that life leaves it into its component parts. Whereas while there is a living activity within it, it retains the form and it continues to carry out all the processes that have to do with life. So there must be something existing in the human organism that allows it to maintain its structure and its form and to continue all the biological processes that we know from our study of medicine. We can visualize a highly organized, energetic system that penetrates every part of the physical mineral body. And for those who are imbued with clairvoyant vision, they have described this as extending somewhat beyond the contours of the physical body, as a luminescent, resonating, vibrating, energetic field, flowing and moving continuously, never still. This is what can be called the etheric life body. And the activity within it has been described in many different philosophies and practices by different names. Some call it prana, some call it chi, others have called it the archeus, the dynamis. We have certain people proposing it as an informational system, others as a morphogenetic field. Rudolf Steiner described it as the etheric formative forces. Once we recognize that there is living within the body a living component of this nature, an organized system, we are encumbered to extend our concept of the threefold system, the body, soul, and spirit, into a fourfold one, one in which the body is divided into a physical body and a life body. And so we have a new picture of the human being as a body, physical body, as an etheric body, as a soul or psyche, and as a spirit. And this is the fourfold picture that we as therapists use all the time to designate these different elements, these different components of the human constitution. We call them 4 human sheaths or 4 human constitutional elements, but we will be referring to these 4 principles in health, in illness, and in healing, in manifold different ways. Steiner described this etheric life body or etheric formative force in very clear, distinct fashion, almost as if he was describing an anatomy book or anatomy class. And he describes that there are 4 specific etheric qualities. And these are related to the 4 elements. Surprise, surprise. There is what he called the life ether, which has a relationship to the solid element, and it has the capacity of unifying and bringing everything into wholeness. Then there is the chemical ether. The chemical ether is related to the water element, and its task is the connecting of parts and the breaking down and building up of parts, the so-called chemical ether. And then he described the light ether. The light ether is connected to the element of air, and the air and the light go very much together. The air allows light to manifest itself. If there was no air, there's no light. And the light ether is that which illuminates, just like the light does. It's that which gives us the possibility of seeing forms and differentiating. And then finally, he describes the warmth ether, and the warmth is naturally connected to the warmth element. And this has a generating and activating life energy. These 4 ethers are responsible for all the biological life processes, such as growing, reproducing, circulating, nourishment, excretion and secretion, respiratory, healing. There are 7 main ones. We will be going into these in greater depth in future levels. Where is the source of this life? Well, I can ask you, where do you think the source of life is in the universe? In our solar system, clearly, it comes from the sun. We can experience the life quality in ourselves and the world in many different ways. For example, if I were to give you 2 seeds, one being a real sunflower seed, another a copy of a seed, how would you know the difference? Well, if you were clairvoyant, you would be able to see the radiating movement behind, remembering that contained in this seed is the whole plant. It's almost as if it's compressed into a tiny little focus of energy. How would you show it if you're not clairvoyant? You would give it some water, you would give it a bit of warmth, and then suddenly you would see the development of a process of growth. And that would tell you there's something different in the one seed that's a real seed. An invisible force is being now allowed to manifest itself. If you observe the seasons and you just are attentive to the flow and flux of nature, you will see that there is a power of life which manifests itself in different ways in the winter, in the spring, in the summer, in the autumn, and brings about very different expressions in nature. So in the winter time, there's no outward expression of this force. Why? Because that force is drawn into the earth. And if you were to see what's going on in the earth during the winter, you would be amazed. And in the spring, you start to see this energy flowing through the plant world. And even in the lower animal world, we see these differentiations in the seasons. I have always been intrigued to try and understand how a tree 20 meters high can bring the fluid from its roots up to the topmost leaves of the tree through finest capillaries, a feat that no science can emulate. And the only possible reason is that there's a sucking force so powerful that it can bring against gravity the fluid up through that distance. And it is through these etheric life forces of the sun that this is possible. Or observe an ant or a beetle which is carrying a load 30 times as heavy as itself. How does it manage to do this? I have been a beekeeper and held a swarm of bees in my hands. It's like a living, swarming, flowing. It gives me the feeling of that capacity, that experience of this living quality of the etheric. For me, a study of the life forces was the beginning of my journey into deep learning. Because as a medical student, I was very disenchanted with the fixed and lifeless quality of learning, where it was about dead corpses and book learning and facts and figures that had very little relationship to human living experience. But when I did a year of research, because I took a year off to find out more about the human being, I studied embryology and I observed chick embryos growing. I could almost see the growth process in front of my eyes. And this gave me a feeling of, yes, there's this incredible power and quality that actually moves matter and is constantly doing that, even though we don't notice it out in the world around us. And then I found my way into examining, exploring childhood and the power and the vitality of the child. This gave me a sense of that life quality. Just observe a child that plays and plays and plays and never ends and never gets tired. In my research year, I also studied biochemistry. And there I found a new connection to the body, because one could imagine the chemistry that is going on continuously, that is so alive. In every little cell, there are hundreds of biochemical processes that are in flux, in motion, changing and transforming in every second of your life. And then it was through a deepening of my understanding of 4 elements and going together with the researchers, the ancient forefathers of our medical system, the Greek philosophers and doctors like Hippocrates, that spoke about the 4 elements and the 4 humours, which were an entry into an understanding of what is life. And so I would urge you to explore this field. It's not something that anyone can tell you about. It's something that you can experience, something that you can observe, something that you can use your thinking to expand your awareness of the static, fixed world of senses that we see about us, because it's not like that. Behind the sensory objects that we see, a plant, there is a continuous process of development. And we can use our thinking activity to actually experience that living process. Why is that possible? As we shall see, thinking is an etheric activity and therefore is able to link itself, if we will, and if we choose to use it in the right way, to a living thinking. As part of this Module 4, we have also included several other topics. These are In Search of a Humane Medicine, Principles of Health, and also the biography of the second 7-year cycle. These will be elaborated on in the Module 5 and 6, but in the meantime, I would urge you to read the respective texts in the handbook that you will be receiving shortly after you receive this video recording. Dear friends, I hope that you will be able to take all this new knowledge into your thinking, into your feeling, into your body awareness, into your action, and that you can use this material step by step to enhance your understanding of yourself and of your fellow human beings, and also that it will give you a ground on which to stand for the further modules, where we will be exploring much more experiential and much more interactive processes in relation also to health, ill health and healing. So thank you so much for your attention. I hope that you will be able to join us in our next module. And until then, I say stay well, stay warm, and our work to be continued.